If there's one thing that every guitar player is chasing, it's clean playing. How do you get the most out of a song without all those blemishes and missed notes? Can you actually become a clean player? These types of questions pop up regardless of what kind of music you play, but they're especially relevant in the world of fingerpicking, because fingerpicking is just hard to do. And I know because I've been a classical guitarist for most of my life, and I've been teaching the mechanics of fingerpicking for over 20 years. And ultimately, it comes down to one question only. Is there a perfect way to fingerpick? Can you actually refine your technique enough to stop making mistakes permanently? Well, we're going to find out. If there really is such a thing as perfect technique, then you should try to be moving in that direction. You might never achieve perfect, but by aiming at perfect, you'll end up a whole lot better than where you started. Now, what's perfect anyway? There are tons of really great fingerstyle players who have totally different playing styles and different techniques. Tommy Emmanuel, Chet Atkins, Paco de Lucia. They all are masters of the instrument, and at first glance you'd say they all have totally different techniques. And in some sense they do. But there are certain things that all the greats have in common. Relaxation, finger independence, power, and control over their tone and dynamics. They basically make their technique really efficient, so they don't have to try very hard. And technique is nothing more than a series of movements. You get the movement right, and your playing will follow. But you get it wrong, and, well, you probably already know how that turns out. And if you focus on the mechanics of how you move, you'll be able to streamline your technique regardless of whether you play with textbook hand position or not. You'll be able to play cleanly, with confidence, and stay relaxed while doing it. You just have to know what those correct movements are. And so today I'm going to outline the most important mechanics in fingerpicking to help you clean up your playing for good. When you look at your favorite player, you probably think, oh, it looks so easy when he does it. He's barely trying at all. And it's because the greatest players know how to stay relaxed, even when they're playing at their limit. And relaxation is the most important part of the whole fingerpicking equation. It is the crux of it all. And unfortunately, there's a good chance you're doing it wrong. Almost everyone is told to curl your fingers and pull through the string. But that leads to some horrible technical issues like excess tension, bouncing your hand, and slow and cumbersome movements. When you curl your fingers, you actually use a lot of muscle to do it. In fact, if you compared a hand that looked like this to a relaxed and loose hand, you'd see a very big difference. Using energy and tension just to hold your hand in a static position is where a lot of this trouble begins. And you haven't even played a note yet. But then you take that curled finger and you have to hook it underneath the string and then pluck, and it causes your finger to yank outward. And inevitably, the recoil from the string breaking forces your hand to fly away from the guitar. And now you're several inches away and you need to quickly find your way back to the instrument in order to play the next note. And this is where the bouncing hand issue comes from. Because every time you play a stroke, it pulls you away from the guitar, and then you have to find your way back. And then you play another one, and the recoil from that one ends up with your hand again away from the guitar. And so your hand is constantly traveling to and from the guitar. It's really inefficient and wastes a ton of energy and time. Instead of using this curled finger, you should use what I call the slingshot. And in order to do it, you have to start with a loose, relaxed hand. And when you do that, take a look at what your fingers look like. They're not curled. They're kind of straight. So you take that loose, relaxed hand and you put your finger on the string. And as you apply pressure, you have to stay loose in your small knuckle. And if you do that, your small knuckle will actually begin to hyperextend as you apply pressure to the string. And then when the string breaks, instead of your whole hand recoiling, only your finger will. If you do it right, your finger will pop right back immediately after the stroke to the spot that it started at. Your hand should look totally still, like you could rest a quarter on it and it wouldn't move. In order to do the slingshot move, you have to be able to do something with your hand that maybe you've never tried before. Think about all the work you've put into your fretting hand. Hammer-ons, pull-offs, slides, chord changes. All those contortions and variations that you can play with your left hand, you need to be able to mirror that in your right hand. You need full control over your finger picking. And that starts with being able to isolate your middle knuckle. As you pull through the string, the majority of the movement should come from here, not necessarily the big knuckle. The big knuckle will be involved, but it's the middle knuckle that starts the action, and it's the middle knuckle that controls the slingshot. Your big knuckle will sort of kick in near the end to finish off the pluck, but the middle knuckle is what we really want to focus on. But you probably won't be able to do that unless you can do this exercise. Start with your hand vertical and the back of your hand flat. Then try to bend from the middle knuckle only. Focus on not moving any of your other fingers. Keep them exactly where they are. And if you can't do it, that's fine. See if you can't bend just that middle knuckle, maybe a fraction of an inch, just a little bit. Just see if you can bend only from that middle knuckle. So that means no big knuckle movement. That means none of this and none of this where your small knuckles are bending either. And if you really can't get it at all, then take your other hand, bend your finger manually until it's at 90 degrees and hold it there. And then slowly lighten up the pressure that you're using to hold it until you can keep your finger there on its own. Once you can stay here, take a mental note of the muscles you're using to hold that position, because those are the muscles you're going to use in order to do the exercise for real. And you'll know when you're doing it right, because when you get to this 90-degree angle, the nerve will get cut off to the tip of your finger, and your small digit will become loose and floppy like this. And it's this floppy small knuckle that allows you to do the slingshot in the first place. So as you're working on more relaxation and being able to do the slingshot move, the majority of the motion comes from your middle knuckle. So you have to be able to do this middle knuckle isolation drill. It'll help your attack become faster and more relaxed, which will end up with you having way more control over your playing. Now, perfect finger picking has some attributes other than relaxation, and finger independence is a big one. If you were a basketball player, you would need to learn how to dribble with both hands. You couldn't just use one in a real game of basketball. So even if you have really good left hand finger independence, you need that same type of independence in your right hand. Like I said, you need full control over your finger picking. If you tend to feel like your right hand is cumbersome, slow, and like you use bulky movements, it's a pretty good sign that you're lacking finger independence. And that starts with your pinky finger. I know you don't even use it for finger picking, but it's still incredibly important. Take a look at what your pinky finger does when you finger pick a pattern. It almost certainly starts curling inward into your palm. And this is a surefire sign that you don't have fingers that are functioning independently. If they did, there'd be no reason for your pinky to move. But it is moving. One of the truest signs of real right hand finger independence is the ability to play with your pinky motionless, sitting there, not moving at all. This means you're not recruiting muscles from other parts of your hand while you play, once again allowing you to relax. And you could be sure that if your pinky finger is moving when you don't want it to, so are your other fingers. And that's a really big problem, because if you, let's say, use your middle finger and you pluck a string, and now your ring finger comes with it into your palm, then it has to travel back out from your palm to the string and pluck. It's the same issue as the bouncing hand, just on a smaller scale. Having fingers that aren't in position ready to play creates a ton of extra movement. You're having to travel back and forth unnecessarily, and it wastes a lot of energy. And this is where a lot of cramping and tightness comes from when players are finger picking. To practice this, start away from the guitar. See if you can even move your fingers completely independently, one at a time without anything else moving. Not a millimeter, no movement at all. Because if you can't do it away from the guitar, what chance do you have on the guitar? Slowly progress until you can move your fingers in different patterns, all independently, and especially without the pinky finger moving at all. This step is really important because you need to learn how to move independently without the resistance from the string. Because once you add the guitar and your finger meets the obstacle that is the string, it's going to want to recruit extra muscle from elsewhere in the hand in order to overcome that resistance. So learn how to do this well without the guitar, and then slowly introduce the idea to single strings and progress from there. And remember, the main thing to watch is that pinky finger. Keep the pinky finger motionless. One thing all great fingerstyle players have in common is power. No one would accuse Tommy Emmanuel or Paco de Lucia of being weak and wimpy on the guitar. They're some of the best of all time to use power on this instrument. Now, power isn't the same as lifting weights or something like that. On the guitar, power has a lot more to do with tendon flexibility than muscle mass. Think about the difference between Bruce Lee and Arnold Schwarzenegger. They're both really strong, but in totally different ways. Arnold Schwarzenegger has brute strength. Lots of muscle, can lift really heavy things. But Bruce Lee has strength, speed, and agility all wrapped in one. You want to be a lot more like Bruce Lee on the guitar than Arnold. The flexibility is your key to unleashing your power. And everyone watching this has more than enough power in their hands to command the guitar like Tommy Emmanuel does. It's his flexibility that gives him that insane ability to attack the guitar. When your tendons are really elastic, it creates this rubbery snapback effect when you stretch and release them. It's something called viscoelasticity, and it's what's responsible for that speed and power of all the greatest fingerstyle players. Think of an old rubber band that's sort of lost its rubberiness. If you stretch it out and let it go, it'll slowly return to its original shape. That's kind of what inflexible tendons are like. They're very slow. Instead, what we want is a fast snap of the tendon. In order to get that, we need to work on a technique that everyone associates with a specific kind of fingerstyle guitar. Rasgueado. It's a flamenco technique that just screams power and strength. But it's not power that's required to do it. Actually, it's rasgueado that helps create the power. When you do rasgueado, you rapidly extend your fingers outward after flexing them. And it's this exact thing that's incredibly good for elasticity in your tendons. And to do this, you start by balling up your hand in a very light fist. You don't need to squeeze real hard. And then you can put your thumb on the corner of the fretboard. It probably will help a little bit. And then what you want to do is you want to explode outward, one finger at a time, from your pinky to your index. And as you explode, your fingernail is going to drag across the strings and really sharply explode through them. But the trick here is keeping all your other fingers still inside your palm. So you explode outward with your pinky and keep all the others. Then your ring, then your middle, then your index. And the entire time you explode out with one, the others are still in your palm. And that counter motion of flexing your fingers and extending one of them, that's going to create a big pull and a big stretch in that tendon. If you try, once you get to your ring finger, let's say, you're going to feel that stretch in this position. You're definitely going to feel it. And it's important to combine that stretch with the explosiveness. You don't want to slowly move your fingers outward like that, and you don't want to use your arm to try to get that power. It's got to all come from explosiveness in the fingers with a still hand that isn't moving. And eventually you could take this and you could turn this into rapid 16th notes or even mild tempo 16th notes. And from there you can move on to a bunch of different rasgueado patterns. There's a ton of them, and if you're into flamenco guitar, you could learn all about the various types, but here are some of them. I-C-A-M-I. I-I-C-A-M. C-A-M-I-P-P. A-I-P. of these will help create tons of flexibility and power in your playing. You'll notice a huge difference in the speed and strength of your attack after probably only a week or two of doing this. It is truly one of the very best technical exercises you could ever do for fingerstyle playing. Now, the last piece of the puzzle for perfect finger picking is tone and dynamics. Learning to control your volume on the guitar is one of the most important parts of fingerstyle playing, especially for acoustic players. Because on the acoustic, you don't have anything else. You don't have a whole pedal board full of effects and sounds to rely on. You have to create everything yourself. You have to do all the various tones and dynamics with just your guitar. The feel in your fingers is how you control the sound that you produce. And that feel requires something called planting. Planting is basically putting your finger on the string before you play it. And I know that sounds real simple, but believe me, it's not. Think of every single note that you pluck throughout the course of a song and having to start that note from the position of being on the string beforehand and not swiping at it from the air. In order to do this, you have to know exactly what string is going to be played next and exactly what finger. It'll look something like this. Every single time I pluck a note, the next finger comes out instantly and plants itself on the string, ready to strike. And when you don't plant, you basically swipe at the string by throwing your finger through the air and grazing the string as it goes by. It makes for a very weak tone and absolutely zero dynamic range. What planting allows you to do is actually preload the string with tension by applying pressure to that string before you strike. And by doing this, you can actually control the volume. If you want more volume, you apply a little bit more pressure. If you want less volume, you apply a little bit less pressure before the string breaks. Now contrast that with swiping. When you swipe, as your finger moves through the air, the only way to change volume would be to slow your finger down mid-air. Now, if you're changing the speed of your fingers as they're moving through the air, that's going to wreak havoc on your rhythm and totally destroy the synchronization with your left hand. Which is why a lot of times players who swipe have pretty much no dynamic range, because they can't possibly control the volume. Not only does planting give you the opportunity to control volume, but also tone. Different parts of your finger have different tones, and the apex of your finger will produce a bright, powerful, very strong attack, while the deeper into the pad that you go on your finger, the rounder, warmer, and duller sound that you're going to get. And by planting, if your finger's sitting on the string before it plays, then you can actually feel where on your fingertip that string is sitting and adjust according to the tone that you need. So you plant your finger, and instantaneously you feel where that finger is on your fingertip. And you move it to the spot you need and apply the correct pressure for that note that you hear in your head. You hear a specific volume and a specific tone, and that corresponds to a specific pressure and a specific point on your fingertip. Now, all of this happens in a fraction of a second as soon as your finger makes contact with the string, which means this planting thing has to be automated. It can't be consciously controlled while you're playing. It's going to require some practice. And so to work on planting, take any scale you want and any two-finger combination in your right hand. And the idea is, as soon as you play one note, your next right hand finger comes out and plants instantly on the next note in the scale. Now, if the note is on the same string, that finger will end up muting the string and you'll get a staccato note. But if it's a cross string, if you move from one string to the next, then you're going to plant on the following string and you won't get a staccato note. So when you change strings, there will be a legato note, and every other time that you stay on the same string, it should sound staccato. Now, the more complex you make the scale, the harder this will be. The more complex you make the finger pattern, the harder this will be. So you can change the difficulty level based on where you think you are. Ultimately, you're trying to connect your ear with your fingers so that when your ear hears a specific tone and a specific volume, your finger can plant on the string early enough to make the adjustment so that it can find the point on the fingertip needed to produce the tone and apply the pressure needed to get that volume. And it can do that for every single note, time after time. All of these elements, relaxation, finger independence, power, tone and dynamic control, all of them make up perfect finger picking technique. And how that's implemented will change from person to person based on experience level, playing style, genre of music, and many more things. And keep in mind that we all make mistakes, and sometimes it can feel like you're moving 3 steps forward and 2 steps backward. Don't sweat it. That's totally normal. That's totally fine. What matters is that you're trying to reduce technical mistakes and make real solid improvement. Now, improvement means balance. You can't have a really great right hand and a weak left hand, and that would just be lame. So if you want a rundown of some of the most important left hand techniques and the common mistakes and how to fix them, check out this video. And let me know in the comments what part of your finger picking you're working on. Are you implementing some of these strategies? And if so, how is it going? Aiming for perfect finger picking is difficult and arduous, but it is one of the most satisfying things in the world to see yourself steadily improve.